Mike's a little limp today. What? That all right, man? That was not like what it was. All right, just ignore that, man. Just ignore that.
Okay,
Just,
context. Please explain the context really quick. Just say what you actually said, because I turned on the mic at the.
Well, hey,
he was saying his mic is a little limp today because it was loose and wouldn't stay in place, and
just you're making this worse. I mean,
no. Well, I feel obligated to explain the context for our younger viewers so that we don't get kicked off.
It's okay. It's college radio. It's college radio.
Okay, fair enough. Well, welcome to Philosophy Talks with Bill
and Caleb. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you had a good time. All right. Yeah. If you listened to us last week, we had a pretty good show. We dealt with rights.
Yeah, and animal rights. And the big question of what that came down to is, I mean, of course, we as people, we have rights. Because we're considered more than just human. We're considered a person, or like both Caleb and I, we are people. And thus, we deserve to be treated as such. Well, why? What is it that makes us not just a human, not just another animal, but a person? Caleb.
What?
Well, then this comes down to the question of, how do you define a person? What constitutes personhood?
That's what we're talking about. Well, I don't know. So let's find out.
Well, I'm gonna get right into the nitty gritty of it.
Well, let's pander around for that. Let's talk about a little more about what personhood kind of sort of is, and stuff.
Well, yeah, what's going on with this thing? I'll kick it off, and I'll just say, that's obviously what a person is. It's a human. I'm a person because I'm a human. They're basically synonymous. They're the same thing, right?
Well, I mean, not exactly.
What?
For example, let's say.
Explain yourself.
All right. Did you ever watch? Superman? Everyone watched Superman.
Actually, I really didn't.
You never watched Superman?
Not really.
Not even the bad movie that came out like it was a long time. It was like 6 years ago.
No, but I heard terrible things about it.
It was disappointing.
Okay. Well, we'll just pretend I have. What are you getting at?
So Superman comes to Earth. He's this super dude, Superman. And he's flying around fighting crime and stuff. Well, you'd say, yeah, I mean, Superman, you give him ethical considerations.
It's what a Superman do.
It's what a Superman do. Problem is, Superman's not human. He's not, by the definition. Saying, well, yeah, if you're a human, you're a person, same. Well, it's not the same thing. Because you have to say, yeah, it's possible that there could be people who you give ethical considerations, and they are like self-aware or stuff like that. It's possible that there's things that exist that do have qualities that are, personhood.
Right. And or even think about from an evolutionary perspective. Humans, how we are today, didn't just it was a process we developed into what we are today, Homo sapiens sapiens. So if you were to, rewind 250,000 years, you get some Neanderthals in there, Homo sapiens sapiens, all of which they have similar qualities to what we have now. They're intelligent and they show signs of culture, all these things.
Yep.
But I mean, Neanderthals aren't humans the way we think of them now.
Correct.
And human is kind of a relative term anyway in that spec.
Also, can you imagine at some point that if you're watching this like an outsider, so you see this progression of humans and whatnot, maybe not a straight line, but I mean they branch out a little bit, but there's still like this progression overall to the humans we see today. Would you say, where do you draw the line in the sand? Say, okay, not human, human.
Yeah.
And also person, not person. Because
Right.
these lines could be different. Let's talk about, imagine, you remember we were talking a little earlier when we were at the Chinese restaurant. We were talking about the Wolf Boy, and a lot of these. We talked about this last year a little bit too.
Right, yeah. Wait, we talked about the Wild Boy last year?
Yeah, we did.
I don't recall.
Very briefly. It was just a note.
Oh, well, anyway. Well, first, a little background on, well, do you want to give the background on the Wild Boy?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know the specific details. I know, like, the rough time period, what the situation was. But anyway, go ahead. Take it away.
I can name 2 examples. I don't remember the names of the more contemporary one. And I'm sure there are some psychology majors out there who do and are familiar with the source material. I learned it in 101 quite some time ago. But the way it worked out was these 2 cases. There were situations in which there were children who were either abandoned or, in the case of the more contemporary case, a little girl was locked in her room since near infancy, and she was given food and whatnot. And this wild boy, he was basically left alone in the woods until he was found at a later date. So they survived, but they didn't have...
Stick with the Wild Boy in this case, yeah.
Well, I mean, they're the same in that neither of them were taught language. They didn't have any human interaction because this girl was locked in her room and saw nobody for like 12 years, 13 years.
She had very, very minimal human interaction. She had some, but extremely minimal. I mean,
she never saw the light of day, though.
At most a couple minutes every few days, maybe. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. This is used in psychology to talk about the vernix area. It's a part of the brain. There's 2 parts of the brain that deal with this and deal with learning language. And it's suggested that at a certain point, you're no longer able to learn language once you get to a certain age. Well, it also seems to be the case that once you get to a certain point, as a human, if you haven't become a person already, you're not going to become a real person. I mean, these people are humans, and you give them some ethical consideration, but it's tricky talking about, like, what kind of rights do they have? What kind of rights do they deserve? What kind of rights can they actually follow through on? Are they capable of following through on?
Right. Or considering the Wild Boy example, I mean, in every respect of the way he acted, he was not human in the sense that we think of them. I mean, biologically, yes, he was just as human as you or I, but he was not raised to be human. He was raised. Was he raised by wolves, or I'm not sure.
I think it was something like that. Yeah,
I think he was raised by a wolf. So even the way he acted, like he could not speak. He would eat raw meat. He like refused to wear clothes. I mean, they conditioned him to a degree over time, over long time. And I think he lived to be like 30 or 40 or something like that.
Something like that.
But I mean, he never really grew to be a person, that would be accepted in today's society. But I mean, just because he didn't act like a person like we normally think of them, does that mean that we can just disregard him entirely in terms of ethical considerations?
Well, not entirely. Just like you can't entirely cut out, say a dog. And we talked about last week. There's clearly something wrong with just going out and kicking puppies. I mean, yeah. It is. You do have to note, though, that you can't give a dog rights. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
When you give someone rights, they're also responsibilities. They're 2 in the same.
Right.
So you can have the right to not be killed, but only if you also are able of, being able to carry out the responsibility of not killing someone else for no purpose.
Right. Yeah. It's the deal goes both ways. In order to receive equal ethical considerations in the case of certain animals, and wow, you turned it way down.
You're way too high.
Oh, okay. In order to receive certain ethical considerations, you must be able to reciprocate that morality. So if we think of, if we consider a dog, or we can use our example from last week, Percy the Cow. Right?
Percy the Cow.
Percy the Cow, yeah. Percy the Cow, he's just a chill little cow, just sitting on his farm. Like, all he wants to do is just laze around, do a little bit of grazing. Maybe create some methane gas, no big deal. But I want to eat Percy the Cow. Occasionally get inseminated, no big deal. But I want to eat Percy the Cow because Percy looks delicious.
Sure.
And it would suit my needs to eat Percy. Now, if we were to consider Percy a person, instead of being Percy the Cow, he'd be Percy the Person, yeah, then we would be giving him equal considerations that we would give one another. Which means that I would not morally be allowed to kill him, even if it suited my purposes. I wouldn't be allowed to steal from him. Here we go. I wouldn't be allowed to steal from him. I wouldn't be allowed to hurt him in any way. I wouldn't be allowed to lie to him or anything. You know, I would have to give him equal ethical considerations that I would give any other person that I come in contact with. But we can only do that if Percy is able to grant those same considerations back to us.
Well, let's talk about this for a little bit. I mean, that seems like a good thing to have, but it seems like there's also some counterexamples. So, for example,
Do tell.
Let's say you have Hank.
Hank.
Hank's a nice guy. He goes to work 9 to 5 every day. He has a lovely family. On the downside, Hank is a psychopath with a penchant. Sociopath. They're different. With a penchant for killing people a little bit. Semi-regularly.
He dabbles in
serial killing.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, anyways.
First of that actually makes you psychopath, not a sociopath. So I think you overstep the boundary of sociopath once you start
there's some
serial killer.
In either case,
There's wiggle room.
there definitely seems to be the case that, well, I mean, Hank is not capable, psychologically, of carrying out these responsibilities and stuff like that.
Right.
But you wouldn't just take, Hank, because, I mean, do you kill Hank? Is that, because there's discussion about, the death penalty and things along those lines.
Right. Well,
and this is very relevant. You can say, well, okay, these people, this person, particularly Hank, he is compelled without the ability to ignore these compulsions because it's so deeply ingrained in his psyche to go out and kill people on a semi-regular basis.
Right. And to make that distinction a little bit more clear, that's not saying that he chooses to commit these acts like completely freely. He's not saying that he feels a sense of guilt and that he is choosing to commit these crimes anyway. No, he does not feel a sense of guilt. And he feels as though it suits his purpose, whether it just be for kicks or whatever it may be.
Hank is not a normal human being.
He does not have that kind of that moral restriction. He doesn't have a conscience in the same sense that you or I do.
Yeah.
That I hope you and I do.
What he's doing is certainly morally wrong. And he's
certainly human, and he's a rational being.
But he's not capable of reciprocity. But you wouldn't say he's not a person. I mean, he still has some rights that are obvious.
Well, some people would say that he is not a person. No person would ever do something that horrible.
But bear in mind, I mean, people have done horrible things throughout time immemorial. I mean, tons of wars, murders, bargains and dealings. I mean, a lot of those things were particularly immoral. However,
immorality,
and they infringed on rights of other people.
Right.
That's the responsibility that we have, is not to infringe on other people's rights. And it's also possible, we've talked about this before, we have responsibilities to do things for other people.
Right.
But at the baseline level, they've broke that. They were still people.
Right. Immorality does not disqualify you from being a person. I mean,
it seems to not disqualify you from being a person. Right.
Well, I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out here. Yeah. Like, it's an iffy territory, trying to figure out exactly what is it that makes a person a person. Take Hitler, for example. Hitler, he made some unfavorable choices in his day.
That's a little... I mean, that's weak sauce.
The general consensus is that he made some bad choices. He did some distasteful things in his time.
This is the part of the show where we speak way, and we're not even. I don't know. Just
I don't know what you're getting at. But little known fact: Hitler loved dogs. He loved dogs. I mean, he would do anything to save a little puppy from a well. He had such a soft spot for them. I mean, if you saw him, like rolling around in the field, playing with a little
If
something.
anyone turned on the show just right now, they would get the impression that you were defending
the mental image
Hitler.
of Hitler rolling around in a field of flowers, playing with puppies, just loving life.
The last 2 minutes of the show, I just want to put it. I mean, Hitler wasn't, he did some, not so nice things, but he liked dogs.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, I mean, one of the truly terrifying things about Hitler is not so much the things that he did, but the fact that he did horrible, horrible things, but at the same time, he was just as human as you or I. The fact that he was just as human as us, but was still capable of those things. I think that's one of the truly terrifying things about Hitler.
Exactly.
Is that he was not just the epitome of all evil. He was not just the essence of evil. He was a human and a person. I think that's a really terrifying thing about that. But anyway,
are you familiar, Bill, with let's take a peek here into what philosophers do and how they do things. Are you familiar with conceptual analysis?
No, I am not, Caleb.
Well, wonderful, Bill.
Is that how a philosopher do?
This is how a philosopher does.
Ooh.
So,
lay it on me.
We're going to learn a little bit about something called conceptual analysis. It's a tool in philosophy that philosophers of both continental and analytical peculiarities use.
Perspectives, approaches.
This used to determine the meaning of words. Okay. So, for example, bachelor. Okay. Well, you can say, this is a super simple example. We've done this a million times on the show.
We have done it a million times.
But it's good to work with.
I'm tired of the bachelor example.
All right.
Anyway.
So if you have pen and paper, right in your head, in your imaginary blackboard, on your the whiteboard in your brain, write down the word bachelor. Okay. Well, what's a bachelor? Well, a bachelor is a man
who's unmarried
and
adult.
Wonderful.
And human.
Well, if he's a man, he's human.
Okay. Well, you could say male.
Well,
but anyway, yeah, that's those are that's generally what consists of how we define a bachelor.
Yeah. So that is, looking at that right there, that's a conceptual analysis of the term bachelor.
Yes.
If you erased any one of those words, you would come up with something that read, a bachelor is an unmarried male. Well, okay. Well, what if you had a 9-year-old? A 9-year-old's not a bachelor, so you have to add an additional term or modify the conceptual analysis you have of that thing to come up with something that doesn't have any contradictions. So it covers the entirety of that definition. So let's look at doing something like that with personhood. Okay, so the first thing we came across.
Break out your mental whiteboards.
I've got my patent paper right here.
It's my patent paper.
I stole it.
Anyway. Okay.
Actually,
so
it'd be pen and paper, not patent paper. Because, paper is a pad.
True.
Anyways.
So yeah, we can do a little brainstorming now and try to figure out, what are some things that we consider a person? Well, first we can look at how we separate us as people from what we consider non-persons. That being generally like animals or plants or really any other living thing that we don't consider a person.
Right.
What is it that separates us from them?
It seems like you'd have to be aware of yourself a little bit to be a person, because you can't have someone that's not aware of themselves interacting with other people and having rights, being able to have reciprocity. Essentially,
they have to, in order to be a person, they would have to self-identify themselves as a person. They would require self-awareness, which self-awareness, you can think of it as the fact that you are able to look into a mirror, see your reflection, and you know that reflection is you. You're able to identify the image of yourself as yourself. You have a sense of self, a sense of identity. You are aware of yourself.
That is one identifier of having self-awareness. We also talked about reciprocity. You wouldn't give a lion rights because a lion's not capable of fulfilling those rights. So if I'm out in the jungle, or wherever lions live, I'm supposed to live in the savannah, and I see a lion, and the lion starts coming up towards me, I'm going to shoot that lion because it does not have the right to live or the right to anything because it's not capable of extending those exact same rights to me. Oh, it looks like we have a caller.
We have a caller.
That's weird. Why don't you pick it up, Bill?
Wait, turn on the... Oh. Hello?
Hey,
Hey, welcome.
Bill?
You are
Hey.
speaking on Philosophy Talks. Who's this?
Yeah, man.
Who's this? Hello?
Hey, man. It's Brandon Bilski.
Oh, hey, Brandon, what's up?
Hey.
You have a comment for the show?
Yeah, I do.
Let's hear it.
Well, we're talking about personhood, and I actually just saw an article about dolphins who can. I got it from the radio off because I can hear myself.
Oh, sorry.
But dolphins actually, they have like they've done experiments where they put mirrors into the tanks, and the dolphins can recognize themselves, and they actually do have a language, and we're trying to decode their language. So, how much would you say dolphins would consist of personhood, and how do we draw the line there?
Yeah, that was actually, that is a very good point. That was actually the case point that, we were going to bring up. I suppose, we can start getting into it now, is that, dolphins have been shown to show many of the signs of personhood that we have previously limited to humans, that being culture, self-awareness, reciprocity, or not reciprocity. Well, Caleb's just like showing me those. But yeah, dolphins have been shown to have many of these same signs that we thought were just limited to us, and yet at the same time, they're distinctly not human. They're not as intelligent as humans, but they are still very intelligent. I mean, arguably, they could be more intelligent than some humans.
Right.
I mean, this is America, standardized tests and all,
Right. Well, I'm just wanting to call in and give you that little tidbit that I'm enjoying where the talk is going. So keep up the great work, guys.
All right, right on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, call. Thanks, Brandon, for calling.
Yep.
And thanks for pointing us in the right direction, because we're actually just about to head on to that.
Yeah.
So we have these two qualifications for personhood. We have, thus far, self-awareness, reciprocity. Is that enough, though? Because we talked about, you can have people who don't have reciprocity.
Right.
But it certainly is something that's
we'll say you can have humans who don't have reciprocity.
Yes.
But there are more qualifiers that we have not discussed yet. One of which being culture, or you could tie culture in with being part of a society, in a sense.
Can we say some sort of like language or communication as well?
That
Tied into that?
That can be included into culture as well. I mean, culture is very, very broadly defined when we're looking at this topic. Yes, it can include language, the ability to clearly communicate with other members of your species, more than just visual cues, more than just little quirks or whatever. Yes, being able to communicate with and cooperate with other members of your species. So, showing that you identify not only yourself as a person, but also other members as people, other members of your species as people, being able to recognize other persons as well. That can all kind of be lumped in with culture. And, that's where we get this idea of society from as well. We talked a little bit about social contract theory last week. We're not going to get in too deep into that this week, though. But do we have any more qualifiers?
Well, let's tie this into reciprocity a little bit. There should be some kinds of moral consideration that the person has. So if we're defining reciprocity as the ability to give moral consideration to other people.
Mhm.
Just the ability. There should also be either tied into that or another step. The ability to consider higher, somewhat of a higher,
Conceptualize a greater thing.
yeah, such as ethics, right and wrong, some of those
Right.
lines. Because you have to consider, right, who deserves rights to be able to give rights adequately.
Be able to, conceptualize abstract ideas. You could put it like that. One point that I will like to bring up, though, when we're talking about like reciprocity, consider infants. You know, a newborn infant or even a toddler, even a 2 or 3 year old, they can't reciprocate morality.
Nope.
Infants, they're not even self-aware.
Nope.
Pretty much the only thing that they are aware of is what is in their immediate field of vision that stands like no more than just 3 feet in front of their body. Like to them, like that is their world. That is all that exists. Like they don't have thoughts about themselves or really about other things because their brain simply has not developed to that point yet. But I mean, if we don't consider infants or young toddlers humans, we can't disregard them entirely from moral considerations. Well, why not? I'm posing that question to you. Why not?
Oh, well, the worst person to pick the question for, I hate kids.
Okay.
But it seems like babies or some toddlers are of this list. They literally have nothing on this list. Not a thing.
Yeah. No.
There is. Bill wants to bring up that there is one thing that could save babies.
Save that argument. Yeah. Save the babies.
Is the fact that they could become a potential person. But we should bear in mind as well, it's not guaranteed that they will become people.
Right. Well, I mean, think. Really, if you're anybody, and if you see a young infant, you know, like it has a name. It has parents. Those parents, they may ascribe character traits to the baby, and they feel a very, very strong attachment to the baby. You don't want to. You're not going to look at their kid, look at little baby Charlie, and say, "Little bugger's not even a person." You're not gonna tell them that because I love their little baby.
Well, I would and have.
Well, that's just because you're heartless and
I
hate
am.
babies. And I'm not really a fan of babies either.
I don't like
But
babies. Babies don't even like
point
babies.
being,
They
I mean,
hate
like
each
when
other.
we look at a baby, we still think of a baby as being not necessarily an equal, but still a person. Point being is that like we do still empathize with them, though their brains are undeveloped and though they lack these traits of what we consider a person, but they are what we may consider a potential person because we know that when they grow up, or we assume that when they grow up, that they will develop these traits, that they will develop a personality, self-awareness, intelligence, communication, culture, all these different things.
Well, I will give that argument some credence.
I mean, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but
But it does seem something like that you can get away with, because you wouldn't say, "Well, Bill, you are no." I like
feet
this.
off the table.
You are like 5 feet away from me. Therefore, you do not deserve rights because you are not in the same physical location as I am. Well, so a baby does not deserve rights because they're not in the same temporal location as I am. It seems like there are some similarities between those two statements. So it is possible that babies could be given ethical considerations.
I'm not sure if I follow what you're getting at here.
So imagine
elaborate for me.
if we're going to agree that time is the 4th dimension.
No.
So we've got stop touching that. You're making weird noises. Stop that. All right. So if time's the 4th dimension, well then you're the 3 dimensions taking up space and stuff. So you're over there, I'm over here, and then our listeners are somewhere else. Brandon's chilling over somewhere else. I don't know where he's at. So he's chilling over there, and I'm like, dude, he's like, 2 miles away from me. He doesn't deserve any, he doesn't got no rights, so I'm going to send this nuke over his way, and then he's screwed, because he ain't got no rights over there. There's only rights over here.
In my world.
Exactly. In my spot. Where I'm standing, the only rights there are where I'm standing. Because there it is. You only have rights if you're in my physical location.
Hey, Caleb, guess what?
What?
I have this this little box here with a little button on it. If you push it, I'll give you $20. I mean, the button, it might do something. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, somebody might die. You know, just...
Yeah. Smash that button and hold my hand out. But, no. So, you could say, all right, well, if time's your fourth dimension, you wouldn't deny someone rights for being 20 feet away, but you would deny them rights for being 20 years in the future. Or 20 years in the past. I don't know how that would work, because they're dead. That's kind of weird. But 20 years in the future...
Well, it's just a wibbly-wobbly...
Yeah, that is kind
timey-wimey.
of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. Because in the future, it would seem like, okay, well, yes, there's no difference between being 20 years in the future, being 20 feet away, if you consider that time is the fourth dimension, and it's something we can interact with, and something that can interact on us. Well, you know, again, the only problem is, well, what about people in the past? They are dead, but 20 years ago, should you give that person ethical consideration? No, that's just dumb. They're dead.
Well, I mean, it's physically impossible for you to. I mean, you're restricted by...
Oh, I mean, you can give dead people rights. You got this corpse just chilling there. Like, yeah, he's got the right. Don't touch him. It's his business. You don't touch him. His personal space.
Well,
no touching.
I want to hold on to this
No
now.
touching. No touching.
Because, yes, this, again, brings up a good point. If you have... Yeah, if a person dies, do they therefore forfeit all of their rights? I mean, like, their physical body still exists. Yes, you may look at that physical body and you identify that body with memories that you may have had of that person, or you still associate the idea that you have of that person with that body when you look at it, though you acknowledge the fact that they are dead and gone, they're not coming back. But you would still, you don't all of a sudden view the body as just being a hunk of meat all of a sudden. You still feel an attachment to it. You still ascribe the idea of that person.
Well, yeah, but that's just, you know, that's a normal human...
So you're right, yeah.
That humans do that. They anthropomorphize stuff. Whether it be a dead body that's inanimate, or it be, I don't know, like the stuffed bear you've got chilling on the bed. And, you know, Mr. Wiggles. You know, you care about Mr. Wiggles, and when you get really sad when he gets 30 and all that other stuff.
All right.
So,
well, yeah, but I mean, that does seem to be kind of hardwired into our biology, too.
Oh, it is hardwired into our body.
Anthropomorphize things. And there have been articles that suggest that there is a evolutionary advantage to anthropomorphizing things. Now, I'm not an anthropology major. I do not know the specifics, but I could, you know, spit out a theory about it.
Yeah. Well, in fact, there has been. There's a professor here who currently deals with things like that with regards to the guy who did the religion debate, the colloquium last year.
I was not there for that.
Oh, well, he, in a nutshell, suggested that people are religious because of their ability to anthropomorphize things. So they anthropomorphize the entire universe.
Essentially, yeah.
I mean, that's his theory.
Well, we'll first just define our terms real quick. When we say anthropomorphize, we're saying you ascribe human traits to
personhood characteristics to things. Yeah. So let's go back to this list though.
Right.
So why wouldn't you give a dead body rights? Well, okay. Well, they're not self-aware. They cannot reciprocate. They don't have a culture or language. They don't have higher order thinking. I'm going to put potential for future more like personhood on there, sort of. But I'm going to put some stipulations. Potential only for the future, because the past doesn't make any sense. And it has to be that particular organism that can be gaining personhood. Because you can say, oh yeah, well this particular species of monkey could potentially gain personhood in 10 billion years. All right, well, that's all well and good. But I don't really give a fig about that because this monkey is not a person. It's still throwing crap at me. And I'm just not going to respect its throwing crap at me. I'm not buying that. That's not how I float. So, I'll sort of leave it on there. But there's still the problem of Hank the serial killer. Because Hank clearly seems to be a person. I mean, you wouldn't say Hank's not a person, but he doesn't have this reciprocity. He doesn't have it. He has everything else, but he doesn't have reciprocity. I suppose you could say he could have the potential for future personhood.
Right. I mean, you could condition him to change the way his psyche operates in order for him to gain a sense of empathy. It's not necessarily a lost cause. You can't really say for sure one way or another. He may be a lost cause, and there may be no way to condition him to have reciprocity.
Let's bear in mind as well, though.
I mean, how are you to determine one way or another?
Let's bear in mind, I mean, maybe we were a little too hasty saying that he doesn't have reciprocity. Because he doesn't reciprocate rights totally. He doesn't care about them. But he still follows through on them. Because remember, we said he has a family. And we said he lives in a house. And he doesn't just go around stabbing everyone that he comes into contact with. He doesn't, burn down everything. He's not a wild man.
You could think of...
he does have culture, and he does have language, and he does communicate and exist in our world.
Have you ever seen Dexter?
Yes, briefly.
I saw one episode of it, but I know what the show is about. But I mean, you can use that as an example.
Sure. That
he lives a normal life on a day-to-day basis, but he's a secret serial killer. I mean, he's a good guy serial killer, I guess. I don't really know the entire plot of the show, but I know he only kills, air quote, bad guys, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
I've only ever seen one episode, so.
No, ditto. I don't. So let's say then that.
But yeah, he is a textbook sociopath, and that he does not feel empathy, even with his girlfriend, or I don't know if he has a family or whatever. He doesn't feel empathy. He doesn't feel connected with other people.
Let's say then that so these serial killers would have reciprocity. Lions don't, but I mean lions also don't have anything else on the list. So it seems like we have, based on this conceptual analysis, a relatively good, solid foundation for personhood, with very few counterexamples. And it would be, after a couple hours of consideration, could be able to tweak this to be fairly firm. So, thinking about personhood, then let's go to dolphins, as per Brandon's suggestion. So we do know that dolphins do have some indications of self-awareness.
Yeah, and
they do have culture and language.
Yes.
To an extent.
And it's something that we were largely unaware of for a long time, but I mean, just very recent studies are starting to show this, and there is becoming more and more evidence to support these claims. Just in the last 10 years, when it's starting to make a strong case for dolphins.
It's possible they could have some kind of higher order thinking. They could have concepts of things that don't exist physically.
Right.
The only thing is reciprocity. Now, within a dolphin pod, there does seem to be reciprocity of a particular moral code, but does seem to be a certain moral code.
Right. One thing in particular that dolphins have shown that is really interesting is that they have been observed to care for their sick, injured, and their elderly. I mean, if you think about it, most animals or even animal packs, they don't do this, or they may put in slight effort, but they won't go very far out of their way to help another member of their pack or family that is sick or injured, or if they're elderly, they won't give up their own resources in order to take care of them, because that won't really serve their own purpose. But in dolphins, they have shown that behavior. Now, I mean, arguably that's not really at an evolutionary advantage, because they have to give up their own resources to take care of others and give up their own energy, and they may even be putting themselves at risk in order to take care of less fortunate members of their family.
So there is some sort of reciprocity, but there's not reciprocity to humans.
Oh no, not humans. They have actually been.
They're
the dolphin caves.
For those of you who are not familiar, dolphins. We really shouldn't be talking.
We really shouldn't be.
Well, screw it. Dolphins have been known to drag humans out into the oceans or rivers or whatever, and then take them and bring them down into caves where they drown them and
rape them and kill them. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Drown them, then rape them, then kill them in that order. Yes. But point being, yes, they don't really have reciprocity for humans, and they may have it for dolphins. Yes. But and that also brings up an interesting trait. Like, is reciprocity limited to just your own species? I mean, clearly we feel that way about other humans, but we tend to not feel that way about other animals. Really briefly, not always the case. It's not really that black and white because, I mean, we have you see the Sarah McLachlan commercials.
Yeah. I mean,
she feels very intimately connected with other animals, other non-human things. We do still empathize with them.
Well, so dolphins do sometimes reciprocate. Moral.
They can be. They can't. Just to be clear, they can be.
There's been scenarios where they have saved, like wild dolphin ponds have saved sailors who have fallen off of boats.
Or wild dolphins being friendly with humans.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So there are cases of reciprocity, but it's so. We haven't yet. Like, there's no means we haven't communicated or anything yet. We don't know if communication's possible. It's really hard to say whether or not dolphins are persons that deserve rights.
Yes, now we can talk about that. Is if we say that, yes, they fit the bill, not necessarily to a T, but well enough that we can consider them persons. Well, what are the consequences of that?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, if we consider them...
We'll have to leave them alone. They'd have to. It's possible that they would have the right. Well, I mean, legally, they would have the right to their own nation.
Well,
sea land.
We won't go that far, but we will say we would be morally obligated to grant them equal rights as we do humans, to citizens, which means that it would be morally unacceptable to kill them, definitely. It already, for the most part, is morally unacceptable to kill them, but it still happens.
But what's the organization that deals with the Geneva Convention? I completely forget the name.
I don't know.
It's the big conglomeration where every country gets together. Like, why can I not remember that name?
Geneva Convention?
No, it's the Geneva Convention. That's a particular thing. The United Nations, yes. The United Nations does have stipulations for what, like, there's a laundry list of rights.
Mm-hmm.
That humans are accorded to, and it may just say persons.
They innate rights, meaning that they are born with them.
I don't know whether there's a specification on humans versus persons. I would not be surprised if it read persons. Either just because someone wrote persons.
Some tells me that if they were to do that there isn't going to be somebody making a case against the semantics of person or humans. I don't think there's going to be people saying well, they're a person, but they, it was just a toddler, so it's not a person here, or whatever. Well, I don't think you'll have too many people that are making a strong legal case against that.
No, well, I mean, it is the.
I
want to say League of Nations, the United Nations.
Yeah, United Nations. Yeah, it's implied that they're just talking about
humanity
in general.
Humans. The wording, the legal wording itself, could be persons. I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
But anyway,
so it seems like, all right, dolphins, maybe.
Yeah, but we're saying that if we can't do that, then we can't morally keep them. We can't have them in zoos. We can't have them in SeaWorld, because that would essentially be enslavement.
Yep.
In slavery, in today's world, thankfully, is morally unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing would go for dolphins then. If they show enough intelligence, enough culture, and all these different qualifiers, then we can't do that. Then we can't have dolphins in SeaWorld anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it would mean that if we were to kill a dolphin, if intentionally, it would be considered murder, and or even if by accident, if they were to be caught in the fishing nets, that would be manslaughter, in a sense, or dolphin slaughter. It would be considered manslaughter, yeah, even if it's accidental. Which, that brings up a whole mess of legality. You're bringing in a...
I don't see dolphins being considered
That's opening
people.
A whole can of worms.
I don't see dolphins being considered people by any government or authoritative agency for quite some time.
Not by any authoritative.
If it
not
is possible.
Right.
But it's highly unlikely that it will be, ever.
Mm-hmm.
That does... So, dolphins, I think we've got that down a little bit,
Yeah.
Pat.
So,
What about artificial intelligence, though?
was that?
Robots.
Yeah. We'll bring that up as our final example. Technology is... Yeah, we have a few more minutes. Technology is, increasing at an exponential rate, as we all know. I mean, as soon as you buy a computer, it's out of date, right? So it seems pretty plausible that, I mean, definitely within our lifetimes, possibly within the next 20 or 30 years, we will develop artificial intelligence. We already do have artificial intelligence to certain degrees.
The singularity.
Yeah, right. What was it? Skynet. Yeah. As soon as Skynet becomes self-aware. But it does bring up a good point that if we build a robot, and if the technology gets to the point that it can create artificial intelligence, and if that artificial intelligence is so advanced that it is able to think for itself, it is able to feel genuine emotions, be self-aware, have all the things that we consider a qualifier for personhood, and able to act like a person, act like a human in every sense, but ultimately all they are is just machinery. Do we grant them personhood?
Here's a question, though. I don't know if robots will ever be able to feel emotions. That seems like it is specifically a biological process.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, that's an arguable thing, because, could we build a robot that can show emotions? Oh, no doubt. That wouldn't even be terribly difficult to do. But, I mean, there'd be a difference between having a robot that can show emotions, having a robot that can actually feel those emotions. There would be a big difference between those two. And it would be, I don't know exactly how you would know for sure whether or not a robot is genuinely feeling those things, or if it's just operating and reacting in a way as if it would.
The Chinese room test.
The what?
The Chinese room test. It deals with robotics and things like that. I don't remember the name of the... I want to say it's Turning. It's not, though. It's basically this thought experiment. It's you take a man, you put him in a room with a blackboard and a piece of paper. The paper has Chinese written on it, and it has the instructions for this person to take a chalk and write down the Chinese characters and sentences on that paper. Well, a person who's looking in on the room, who does not see the paper, may see a man just writing Chinese on a blackboard and assume that this man knows Chinese. It's a reasonable assumption without knowing the inner mechanics of that room. And even if you do know the inner mechanics of that room, the fact that this man is copying down a thing based on Chinese, you couldn't know for certain, without knowing the man, whether or not he knows Chinese.
Certainty.
It's a tricky situation. So it's hard to say, is the robot mimicking a person and the person's emotions, or are they actually a person? In fact, I think it's highly unlikely that humans would ever be able to say, yes, that's a person, or yes, that's not a person, even with this list.
Well, to do so would be the equivalent of any given person attempting to identify and prove the existence of another mind. Bringing right back to solipsism. I can see you, I can know that you exist, but I have no way of actually knowing if your mind actually exists. Even if I can see your brain is operating the same way that my brain does, I have no way of actually knowing that your brain is operating in a way that can actually produce thoughts and minds and feelings and emotions genuinely in the same way that I know that I am. Consider that...
Or the other way around. There's the Radio Man thought experiment that we spoke about.
Right. What, say that for another time. But consider the fact that the human brain operates very, very similarly to the way a computer does. Consider that a computer, all the data in a computer consists of bits, which is combinations of zeros and ones. Everything that a computer operates is based on trillions and trillions and trillions of combinations of 0 and 1. The human brain operates in a very similar fashion. Instead of zeros and ones, it is the function of the way neurons in the brain are firing. If a neuron is firing, it is on, essentially, and when it is not, it is off. That on and off presence of neurons is essentially equivalent to zeros and ones of computer data. But when the neurons in your brain are firing these electric signals, they are doing more than just sending impulses to your body to do certain things. You're forming thoughts, in a sense. But the thoughts themselves don't exist in a physical, material sense the same way our body does, Yeah,
we talked about this a while ago, and we'll probably bring it up in another show.
So yeah, I mean, but that brings up the good argument, is if we have, a computer brain and a robot that is performing the exact same functions of a human brain, it's operating in a very similar way, in essence. If it's able to perform the same functions, can we say if it has thoughts or not? If it is able to, self-reflect, become self-aware, feel emotions, be able to think for itself?
That's a good question, Bill. But I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it next time, as we are now at our time limit.
Aw, man.
It's 7 o'clock. I'm sorry, guys, but we're going to have to get out of here. So,
anyway, yeah, food for thought. I'll have fun dwelling on that tonight.
we'll talk about it next show.
Okay, well, we could pick up where we leave off, but I mean...
We don't have to. We could, though. We'll think about it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for listening to us, guys. Signing off. This is Caleb.
And Bill.
And we'll be back next week. And I'm going to play you out. Not with R. Kelly. It's getting slim pickings. Earth, Wind, and Fire? No, I don't want to do animal.
For the record, I don't like the Radio Man example.
Yeah, the radio. Really? That's a great thought experiment.
I feel like it disproves its own point.
It basically is just a wrench in the works. Oh, you know what? Devil Wears Prada. You love Devil's Wears Prada.
Mm.
All right. See you guys.
Have a good night.